Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Cookiecast. Today on Cookiecast, it's up Liante. So you've got the stats mistress, the Liante herself. I'm reliably informed there's going to be running, games, TV and movies. Sounds fascinating. This one's got a video, so if you're not checking us out on YouTube, now's a good time to jump over there and check us out. While you're there, click the subscribe button, click for the notifications, and then run and tell all your friends and family what you just did and tell them to do the same. So here we go. This is Cookiecast, up Liante.
Hello, podcast people. Can you hear me? I'm just getting set up. Let's get the camera on. Camera is rolling. Microphone is on. Let's get seated back in the chair, ready to begin. Need a drink. I should have probably done that before I switched everything on. Poor planning. Sorry. Okay. Hello, people. So, this week, upping the Liante by recording for 2 weeks running, rather than it being a fortnight apart. I felt like last week's podcast was a little bit, like I wasn't engaged, I wasn't really talking about my content as I should have been. I felt like I was just reading from a list and reciting things. So I thought if I recorded the podcast weekly, then I'd have better memory of the things I was trying to talk about and less to talk about all in one go. So hopefully this works a little bit better. It means the podcast should be a little bit shorter, but we'll see how it goes. So thank you for tuning back in for another week. This is podcast number 5, I think. We are sat here. The sun was shining, but it is absolutely freezing. Very cold the last couple of days. Been sat with 2 jumpers on most of the day, but I had to take my additional layer off to record this. Didn't want to be too warm, and don't know if anybody's noticed, for those of you watching, that I always have an animal print on. So it was necessary to take my jumper off so that you could see today's animal print. So where are we? Week 8 into lockdown. Starting to lose track, I think. We've had the announcement from Boris on Sunday, sort of relaxing some of the lockdown rules, saying those people that can't work from home are able to try and start returning to work as long as they don't use public transport to do so. We're now allowed, or as of tomorrow, we will be allowed to exercise as many times as we want to during the day. We're not restricted to once per day. Can also travel to other locations to exercise, I believe, or even just to enjoy the outside. So you can travel to a beach, you can enjoy picnics and outside sports in parks and things, as long as you're only with the members of your household or one other person or one person from another household, but as long as you maintain the social distancing of 2 metres. So a few relaxations on the rules. There's talks of schools returning from 1st of June, or some year groups within schools. I think they are working through what that actually means in terms of practicalities, and I even saw reference to potentially nurseries being able to return from the 1st of June as well, so waiting to see what that might mean. If we're able to get the baby back into nursery, then that would mean that I could work a couple more days a week, which would sort of completely change things for me, change the dynamic of lockdown. So that's where we're at. In terms of running, we have not had a good week. We've had a very bad week, in fact. So the last run I did prior to the last podcast, in fact, it wasn't a good one. I'd done my 5k and then I'd gone out on the Monday, last Monday, and I'd managed to run a mile or so and then felt that I had to stop and the vet had called and all those sorts of things. I'd already stopped before the vet had called, so I guess it was just lucky that I'd already intended to stop before the vet called. So I then went back out didn't get to go out on Wednesday. I had an early morning meeting, it's my working day. I had a meeting from 8 o'clock which actually ended up being cancelled, so I could have gone but I didn't. So I went on Thursday instead when the baby had her nap, and I took my route towards town. So I ran 2 miles without stopping. I ran towards town, and there was a route that I could basically come back, which would be 2 miles, or the route that I decided to take would essentially be 3 miles back home. I hadn't stopped at the point that I decided that I was going to go the 3 mile route, set off along there, but I was struggling really badly. I had a horrible, I want to call it like a stitch, but it wasn't your standard sort of stitch down in your tummy area where it pulls or hurts. This was right in my ribs, and it just felt like the muscle had really tightened, so I wasn't able to take a deep breath. So a long stretch, maybe half a mile or so, I was shallow breathing, very uncomfortable, and I was running along. I had my hands out like this. I was trying to open up my chest in order to take a deep breath, but this muscle was just so tight that I couldn't. I was incredibly uncomfortable and made it very difficult to run. Suddenly, at some point, it relaxed and I was just able to take a big gasp and felt better for it, obviously, but I think the duration that I'd run whilst trying to cope with that and shallow breathing, it just sapped all of my energy. I just had nothing. So I'd gone to stop and I thought, no, don't stop, keep pushing. So I kept pushing a little bit further, and we're talking sort of like, I don't know, probably 0.1, maybe quarter of a mile, and I was suddenly like, no, I need to stop. So I managed to run just over 2 miles, and I was already on this route, the 3 mile route back home, so I just ran and walked all the way back until I made it home. So I was out an hour. I was actually, although I'd only run the 2 miles solidly, I was happy to have covered all the distance. It took me an hour to do 5 miles and get back home. Very pleased actually to have covered that increased distance, even though it was run and walking to get back. I'd also been challenged with the 5k. I think I'd mentioned on the last podcast, something going around on Facebook and challenge people to do 5k and donate money to the NHS and then nominate somebody else to do it. I'd received that challenge a couple of days prior and used that as my completion. So I sent a picture of the route that I'd completed to my friend that nominated me, just to let them know that I'd done it. I felt bad that I didn't run the 5k, but I'd covered the distance, so be it, I did it. So that was my first run of this last week. I've actually done 4 runs over this last week. I'll explain why as we go on. So run 2, I went on Saturday. I managed to run a mile and then give up. There's just something, my legs, the pain in my legs is just unbearable, and I probably need to run far enough to run through it that it then becomes comfortable, but trying to get to that point at the moment is just, it's too much. I feel like I did my 5k and then suddenly everything's just unravelled and I've just gone completely backwards almost to the beginning, and it's like I achieved that initial goal and then I've just lost that incentive almost to run through the pain and keep going, because I feel like my next goal, whatever that might be, 4 miles say, is almost unachievable. So I need to find a new balance. So I went out on Saturday, run a mile, and then basically walked a mile back home. I was just really frustrated, just completely fed up with the whole process. I keep questioning, when will it get easier? When will I be able to run like I used to be able to? Maybe I'm just old now, and it'll never be the same. It'll always be uncomfortable. So I decided at that point I needed a new plan. I feel like that's been my motto every week almost. I need a new plan because things aren't going the way that I would like them to. So my new plan, which I implemented as of yesterday, in fact I had two options. Either I needed to run less, so only maybe run twice a week so that my legs had more recovery time and I had that energy and strength in my legs to be able to try and do the longer distances, which seemed almost counterproductive to reduce the number of runs I was doing, but it was an option. Or I could drop down my distance and increase the number of runs I was doing to try and build up strength. So I've opted to do that. So my plan is currently to run a mile or thereabouts, whatever I feel I can manage on that particular day, but do it every day. I've also then thrown Joe Wicks back in the mix. I felt like not doing Joe Wicks, I wasn't good. Became part of mine and the baby's routine, doing it on a morning. So I've introduced that back in. Do Joe Wicks on the morning, and then I aim to go out for my run when the baby has a nap. But I'm only gone for as long as it takes me to do a mile or so. So yesterday went out and did that. Did my mile. In fact, I don't think I even did a mile. I was struggling with that one. This leg pain. If anybody knows what it is, how to fix it, do let me know. That'd be great. I feel like when I'm in the shower, I'm massaging down my legs, and it just feels, it's just like bruised and popping all the way down. And I don't know if it's just the muscles readjusting or what, but something needs, maybe they need a massage. Maybe I need reflexology, which is something that I used to have done quite regularly. It really helped with my feet and pains that I got, but I haven't had that done since pre-pregnancy. Can't have reflexology when you're pregnant, and then just haven't had made the time to do it since. Anyway, what was I saying? Yesterday I didn't quite make the mile. I think I did about 0.8 of a mile, which is just terrible. And it probably took me a mile to walk back home after that. It's not acceptable. I totally understand that. And that's probably by anyone's standards, not just mine and the pressure that I put on myself. So that was yesterday, and then today I've been out and I managed to run my mile. As soon as I got to the mile, I was like, stop dead. I didn't do my 2.5 minute walk this morning. I left the house and I just set off running. So immediately I had to run up a slight incline, which threw my breathing out from the get-go. But I managed to make it round the mile. Only going a short loop round the block. I didn't set off sort of on a 2 or 3 mile loop, only intending to run a mile. But I'll just keep it local, and then it's easy to get back home. I also tied in today's run with need to stop at the shop for some bread. So I took my bank card with me and just ran the mile, walked up to the shop, popped in for essentials, which was bread and chocolate, obviously, and then back home. So I thought if I've been out for my run, I didn't want to have to be thinking about going back out to the shop. Again, even though I think that's probably allowable given that bread is considered an essential item. But I tied that all in and then back home. So that is my new plan. It's still painful, but I'm just hoping that at some point my legs will build up enough strength that they'll become accustomed to running every day, so that then when I decide to drop it down to back to 3 times a week over a longer distance, I'll have that strength there to keep going and find it easier, maybe. Will it ever become easier? Doesn't feel like it at the moment, but I am not easily beaten. No, I'm not. I am quite determined. The 10 mile is still my goal. Whether that's allowed or not, we don't know at this point. Whether it'll be, I'm not sure how they could maintain social distancing in a organised running event. But I think was the marathon organised for October. the London Marathon I'm talking. So who knows, even if it doesn't go ahead, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't still have this goal in mind. Something else I was going to mention, when I was on Facebook yesterday, I had a 5-year reminder of a photo, or a couple of photos, and it was of the Leeds Half Marathon that I took part in. This is something I mentioned before, that my mum was supposed to participate in with me, but she had to pull out because she damaged her toe, couldn't wear her trainers, and I ended up having to train myself. And it was the longest distance that I ever ended up running that I trained for by myself, and realised that I could actually run these longer distances on my own. But just thinking back to that day, there's the Leeds Half Marathon, and I've probably covered this before, I feel like I have. It is tough going. There's quite a lot of uphill, and there's quite a long stretch alongside a main road. So when you're out there on your own and you're just running alongside a main road that's been closed off to traffic, it was just quite barren, as I call it. There's sort of not a lot to look at, not a lot going on. Even when there's music and entertainment and people outside the house and cheering you on, there was none of that along here. It was just dead. That was a tough route, and it's not something I can ever imagine having the courage to enter again. It's one of those where in my mind I would like to think that I would, but it would just be... I like to think that I would enter it again, just so you can relive it and remember how bad it was. And if you think, was it really as bad as I remember it? But it was. So much was uphill. There was... You're running through a housing estate, or a housed area anyway, and you run up a hill and you'd be thinking, I've just got to get to the top of this hill, I can see the end in sight, it's just there. But then you'd turn that corner and it would be another housed street, but it would go uphill again, and it was just the fact that the corner made you think you'd reached the top and you hadn't. And then inevitably, once you had finished getting to the top of all those hills, there was a very steep downhill, and that was just killer on the calves. You're sort of trying to steady yourself so you're not going too fast to run downhill, but the pain's excruciating. And then the main road section that I was just talking about, that was kind of on an incline upwards. That it was a horrible route, but I did it, and that was the fastest I've done a timed half marathon. I've only done 2, to be fair. That was 2 hours 8 minutes for me, that was good. I was pleased with that, really happy. And just the last stretch, I could just see that finishing line. I think I'd started to go cold in the last mile or so. I'd had a jacket with me which I'd taken off, and I think in that last mile I was either thinking about putting it on or had put it on. But I think my body just started to shut down. So I crossing that finishing line. And then seeing my mum, who had gone with me, travelled with me, to sort of wait for me, and just floods of tears, and just couldn't believe that I'd got through something that felt so excruciating at the time, and to have achieved it on my own. But yeah, I had the reminder that was 5 years ago, and it seems like to have been in that running position only 5 years ago, but at the same time 5 years ago feels like a huge amount of time. It's like another lifetime ago. Certainly not in that place now. Okay, so I've covered my new regime, my daily runs, daily Joe Wicks. I've tried to throw in some yoga as well, because I was thinking back, and I did yoga up until I fell pregnant. I was doing hot yoga at the time and then had to stop because shouldn't do hot yoga, the heat and sort of when you're pregnant. So all of that stopped. I went on to do pregnancy yoga, but it's not quite in the same vein. But I was thinking about my running and what's different, what's harder, and there's the obvious stuff that I've been through about, obviously I've got more weight on me, I've had a baby, my body's changed and all that stuff. But I was also doing yoga regularly, Ashtanga yoga. I've never quite realised how fit, or I'm not sure flexible is necessarily the right word, but just the strength it actually gave me. I didn't realise how much I took that for granted at the time. So I'm trying to reintroduce a little bit of yoga, and I'm trying to do some of the old Ashtanga moves, like the vinyasa that you do as part of an Ashtanga flow, and it's so hard. And I think I was doing that at least once a week. Sometimes I did it twice, and then I shifted over to hot yoga for a while. Can't remember if I was doing both at the same time. There must have been a bit of an overlap when I was doing both, but just trying to do a couple of the moves. I've tried adding it on to the end of Joe Wicks as a bit of a stretch. I'm hoping to build it up at some point, and I think there's no doubt that probably gave me a lot of strength for running that I didn't realise that's where it came from. So maybe I feel like I've kept saying I needed a new plan, and maybe I've just not given each of my previous plans enough time to embed to see how it pans out and if things get better. But I also think you need to adapt to the situation and find things aren't working, then you need to change it. So let's see if all these things together starts to work. I don't plan to run 7 days a week. It should only be 5. So I will report back, assuming that I'm now doing this weekly. I will report back next week. Obviously for you this won't go live until next Monday, but it makes no difference to you because you're still hearing it a week apart. So let's see, watch this space, see what happens. Right, so I've covered my run, I've covered the exercises and Joe Wicks. What have I been watching this week? So watched a couple of films, one with Cookie, one without, this week. So the one we watched together was on Saturday. We watched Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker. I have to say this isn't necessarily something I was that bothered about watching. When I was trying to think back to the previous Star Wars films, the more recent few, I must admit that I'm confused by the storylines. I'm not sure where they all fit in. I wasn't sure how Rogue One and Solo fit into those, if they did, and I found out after they didn't. They were sort of the standalone movies. Sorry listeners, I was just having another drink. Yeah, so I was trying to think back to what had happened in the previous film. It was the one with Mark Hamill, and he died towards the end of the last film, but then he sort of used the Force to travel, sort of in the ghost image form, and it had Carrie Fisher in as a general, sort of, of the Resistance. I think that was the film that she was filming when she actually passed away. So the latest instalment, Rise of the Skywalker, still had Mark Hamill in a ghost form, and Carrie Fisher. I don't know how they did that actually. The storyline was okay. There's some unnecessary, what I felt unnecessary. We've got 2 moths in here this evening. I've got one on either side coming for me. Some of the script in it was just unnecessary, and just sat there watching like, oh, come on, get on with the storyline sort of thing. I didn't think it was too bad. It was perfectly watchable. The fight of the Resistance carries on. Emperor Palpatine is back from the dead. He's trying to pass the power of the Sith onto Rey. As Rey is a member of the Resistance and wanting to fight the good fight. There are a few twists and turns along the way, a few plot twists. I won't throw any spoilers out there. Thought somebody was dead at one point. You think, oh god, that was a brave move, but yeah, twists and turns along the way. I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't horrendous. I wouldn't be in a hurry to watch it again soon. As I say, my memory of these films, it's very sketchy. These sorts of things don't sink in with me. If they don't stay with me, it probably means that I didn't enjoy it. I'm even struggling to think now what actually happened in it. But it was, having said all that, it was watchable. So if you have seen the others, then yes, you should definitely go and watch it. If you haven't, then you should probably watch the 3 original Star Wars films, and leave it at that. Don't need to go any further. Yeah, let's leave that. Should I give it a rating? I'd probably give it 7 out of 10. Okay, maybe I should introduce this going forward, a rating for each of the films. It gives you, because I feel like I just keep saying, oh, it was okay, it was watchable, and you need a gauge as to whether that means what that means on my scale. So there, yeah, 6 or 7 out of 10, I think. Then watched another film on Sunday evening. Cookie and I watched separate films. He did not want to watch the film I had chosen to watch. I think he saw it when it came out of the cinema and didn't have a good opinion of it at all. Wasn't prepared to give it another chance. But it's a film that I've been saying on this podcast that I wanted to watch, needed to watch. So it was Godzilla, King of Monsters. Watched it on Sky. Thank you to the Haydens for that. And that I thoroughly enjoyed. The storyline is sketchy. It reminded me a lot of another film. What is the film? I think it was 2020 or something. It was an apocalyptic film. Can't remember what it was called. But the storyline reminded me of the start of that. There is a separated family, a husband in one location, a wife or an ex-wife and their daughter in a different location, and you go on to realise that both parents have been scientists. They're part of a team called Monarch in the film, and they deal with the rise of the Titans, as the monsters from Godzilla are referred to, but they're sort of on separate sides at this point in time. They've obviously separated, having had a tragic event at the last catastrophic event that Godzilla had caused. So there'd been an attack on San Francisco. They'd ended up suffering a tragic event and then going their separate ways, it seemed. The mother and the daughter, who was what's her name? Millie. Is it Millie Bobby Brown? I got that confused with some other name. The 11 from Stranger Things, for those of you that are familiar with it. Her mother was, what's her name? Something Farmigo. She's got a funny name. She is the mother in the TV series of Psycho, which is also called something else. God, my memory is terrible. This is a problem. I blame this on having had a baby. My memory is just shot to pieces. I don't remember anything. In fact, I've probably said that already on a podcast and now I don't remember that. I do have a recollection that I've already mentioned this. Bad memory. I don't even know what I was saying now. So, a bit of a dodgy storyline. Godzilla, I think, hadn't been seen for 5 years at this point in time. But I don't want to sort of give the whole storyline away. It's quite an old film. People have obviously probably seen it by now if they wanted to. The scientists have found a way to communicate using sort of like a sonar sound system to communicate with the monsters, and it starts to make things go a little bit haywire. Sorry, another drink. Very dry this evening. And all the monsters basically start to rise up. The Titans, I should call them by what they referred to in the film. So main Titans that have arisen in the film are there's Godzilla, obviously. We have Mothra. We have King Ghidorah, and then there is another creature which I actually don't know the name of. It's a giant winged bat, potentially. They're the main titans, monsters in the film, and I just like a monster film. I don't know what it is, but I just really enjoy a monster film. So I watched this film. I said to Cookie, I really enjoyed that, and he's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, why? And I said, well, there's monsters in it. There was like fighting, and he was like, but you don't see any monsters, and you don't actually see them fighting. And I can understand what he's saying, because there are a number of fight scenes in the film, but you don't necessarily always see what's going on. A lot of it's behind smoke almost, and clouds, and sort of they have ways of hiding what's actually going on, presumably sort of to reduce the production for the film. But I just enjoyed it. I liked it was watchable. That just seems to be my phrase. It was perfectly watchable for me, but on an enjoyable level. It didn't have a brilliant storyline, but it had one that worked for the film. There were maybe a couple of plot holes, the way in which they need to give Godzilla a bit of an energy boost. I mean, essentially could have killed him, destroyed his home, sort of the place that he'd go to rest, but I don't know what you expect from a film that contains a number of giant monsters. I enjoyed it. It was good. So that for me is a solid sort of 8 out of 10. Up above the 6 or the 7 that I'm giving Rise of the Skywalker. That probably puts Rise of the Skywalker at 6, because there was a clear differential between my enjoyment levels. Yeah. So if you're looking for a good monster on monster action fight, Godzilla, King of Monsters, go watch it. There is another film. No, I had 2 choices of films to watch on Sunday, and my other one that I've been wanting to watch this week is Gone in 60 Seconds. Now, that is an old film, but there's a reason that it's come back round to the foreground in terms of wanting to watch it, and that is some mention of Nicolas Cage over the last week or so. Nicolas Cage has apparently been named as the person that will play Joe Exotic in the Tiger King movie. I have no idea what the actual storyline for this film is. I don't know if it's following the documentary somehow, or if it'll just be the rise of Joe Exotic in terms of the creation of his zoo and so forth, probably his downfall as well in the same breath. But Nicolas Cage has been named to play him. Now I'm not swayed either way. Do I think that's a good thing, a bad thing? I'm not sure if it's a fit or not. I would just be happy to watch it and see whether it pans out. But the fact there was this brought up a conversation on Facebook with Cookie and Laura, his sister, a little backwards and forwards, and somebody else that I didn't think was a particular fan of Nicolas Cage. But there ended up being a GIF put on Facebook, and it just showed this, which is a snippet from Gone in 60 Seconds, and it is one of my favourite Nicolas Cage things to do, or to show Cookie. It comes up at various points for whatever reason. So that was the GIF that I saw on Facebook in relation to this conversation, and it made me want to watch Gone in 60 Seconds. It's also got an absolute classic line, which I'll never forget, in that 2 Rogers don't make a right. I believe that is a line from the film. I'll be able to refresh my memories on all these classic snippets when I actually watch it. So my plan is to watch that in the near future. I looked on all the streaming channels. It wasn't available for streaming for free. I went and had a quick look through Cookie's DVDs and found it there, and it just reminded me there's a reason why we hang on to these movies, because when a time arises when you're desperate to watch an old film and it's not available on the internet or live streaming, whatever, then you can always go back to the DVDs. So we've got it there. So that's on the agenda to watch in the near future. On TV, I've still been watching Gangs of London. I've only just managed to finish episode 3 as of last night. There was another fairly brutal fight. There's a guy in it, Elliot he's called. He's an, should I say this? Spoilers, you're probably already watching it if you're interested. Undercover policeman, working for the Wallaces in the series. They're the sort of bosses, if you like, of the gangs. And he just gets involved in the most brutal fights. He's had a couple so far, 3 or 4 maybe, and it's just like absolutely getting pummeled to almost death. I think this guy had an axe. They'd already had a bit of a gunfight, and then he was fighting against him with an axe and a knife, sort of trying to fend off these attacks against him. Ends up going through a wall, but he already had a couple of episodes ago, maybe the second one, he'd already had a similar fight with another guy, one-on-one in a room, in a small flat. There was some weapon involved in that. I can't remember what that was, but he manages to prevent substantial injury somehow. He's either very well practiced in these fights, i.e. he's had a lot of fights in his lifetime, or he's just, I don't know, is it that survival instinct? He's in a situation where he's going to end up dead if he doesn't kill the other person first, so just drives him on. Obviously I know it's not real. There's very well choreographed though in terms of the fight setup, because it looks real. It looks good. So still plugging away at that. I've had a comment on my previous podcast from Bob Davies. If you're watching, big shout out to Bob. You know who you are. Telling me to stick with it, which I will do. I will keep watching. Once I've started, I usually see something through to the end, even just to say that it's finished. But it is a bit of it's a long slog. I always tend to end up watching the episodes in 2 halves, just 30 minutes at a time. It's just easier for me to digest. Haven't been watching any other series this week. I feel like I've not had time. As I say, I've had 2 evenings of movies. Last Tuesday I recorded the podcast, and then I was working the rest of the evening. Last Wednesday I had a call with my friends, and then we did a quiz on the call. We finished the quiz we'd started the previous week. Once we'd finished the quiz, a couple of people dropped off and a few of us kept chatting, so that was Wednesday evening. Thursday evening I probably had time to do something. I don't know what I was watching. Probably some nonsense. Or maybe finishing off the Cyntoia Brown documentary. Friday we had a group call with some of the same friends, but a different group of us playing Cards Against Humanity. We didn't start that until 8 o'clock UK time, but a friend Sky is in Mauritius, and that's 3 hours ahead. So we played for 2 hours and it got to 1 a.m. for her, and we sort of called it quits. If anybody's struggling to find entertainment to sort of keep yourselves busy, you've done the quizzes, or you feel a bit, I don't know, quizzed out, whatever, Cards Against Humanity, I mean, to be able to laugh, Cookie and I were talking about this, to be able to laugh as much as we do when we play that is just, it's just amazing. It's such an amazing feeling just to have that level of entertainment and humour when you're essentially all in separate locations. We just play it through an online portal, play.io or something I think it's called. Set up a call. It's not even a video call, we just hear each other, but just the laughter just kept flowing. It was a really good evening. We're penciled in again to play on Friday, which is actually Haz's birthday, the big 3-0. Shout out to Haz. Probably won't thank me for having called out her birthday and her age. Too late, because by the time this is airing it'll have already happened. So yeah, we penciled in. We were pending what Boris might say as to whether she was in a position to make any other arrangements, and if not, we said we would pencil in to play Cards Against Humanity again, so she had a backup plan and at least guaranteed laughter on her birthday. I will be calling by one evening this week, just to drop off a gift as well, just a little bit of something. If you can't go out, then I guess you have to have a bit of a night in brought to you. So I will be doing that later this week. But yes, play Cards Against Humanity if you're looking for something. Obviously you need to have that sense of humour where you find these things funny. It is dark. It is dark, and it is not politically correct or there's no way around that. It's not PC in the slightest. If you don't find those things funny, then it's probably not the game for you, and don't listen to me, don't play it, because I don't want any complaints. If you can take those things with the humour intended, then it's good entertainment. That covers the rest of the stuff in my week. I think I was saying that I hadn't had much time to watch an awful lot because that filled up the week. So that was Friday evening. Saturday evening we watched the Star Wars movie. Sunday evening I watched Godzilla, and then last night I just watched half of Gangs of London whilst having my tea. Did I do anything else? Feels like I would have done more, but I don't know. Maybe not. I think the baby was on a bit of she wasn't settling as well last night. She slept for sort of an hour or so and then woke up a couple of times. Cookie was trying to do his podcast. Guaranteed Cookie podcast night, the baby does not settle or sleep well. I, on the other hand, I do my podcast and we have minimal issues. It's just the way it goes. There's always something against him. Other thing just to quickly touch on then is the games I've been playing. I'm still on Animal Crossing. I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to just moan about a game that I'm still continuing to play. I'm not going to say anything about it, but I am still plugging away. Still keep checking in on it every couple of days. I have also played, I sat down one evening to play Animal Crossing, to check in, to do what I needed to do for that day, and Mario Party was in the Switch. But I'd already sat down, I didn't want to have to get up and change it, so I actually sat and played Mario Party as a one player. Quite entertaining for a sort of 40 minutes play. It was, I was playing through things where you're actually using the controller and it's motion detected, so there was a lot of movement. I had to do some marching, I had to do some window washing. I also played on a section where I was in in rapids in an inflatable boat, so I was having to use the controller. I was on the right hand side of the boat, my character was, so I was having to use the controller to actually dip the oar in and out of the water. I'm trying to control it to avoid various obstacles, but also pop balloons to take you into mini games, and then lots of motion activated stuff. So my arm ached actually the day after. You're only getting movement in one arm because I don't play left-handed, obviously. But that was interesting, and that's what I was doing last night. I ended up playing Mario Rabbids just to see what that was like, and that is, I'm not sure what I was expecting from that. I didn't really know what the game was, but it's a little bit of it reminded me of Worms in some respects. It's a little sort of strategy game where you're trying to take down targets on the other team. Your players are hidden behind blocks or sort of structures in the environment. You get to move your character and then take a shot at somebody on the other team, or you can take a shot and then move your character sort of to try and remain hidden. Obviously if you're hidden behind something, there's less chance that the enemy is going to be able to hit you full on and take you out, essentially. You've got 3 people on a team, you all get a go before it then switches to the opposing side. You collect new guns along the way, and ultimately you're working your way from A to B at the same time, so you're trying to work your way through a level and take the other team out. Not what I was expecting at all, but quite enjoyable. Play through a couple of levels of that. Cookie was saying, now that I've played it, when am I likely to put it back on, now that I know what it is, but I enjoyed it actually. So it will be one to rotate in there. It's not a main game. You're not going to invest your time in trying to complete it, but it's certainly something to keep on the sideline. So, as I keep saying, I need to return to the Zelda the other Zelda game to really invest my time in. But I keep saying that and still haven't, so it'll happen at some point, but who knows when. So that's it on the game stuff, and that's it for my list. I just wrote one side of notes, tried not to be too prescriptive in my notes, because I end up trying to think, and I was like, oh, what do I want to cover? Because whilst I'm talking, I end up forgetting stuff that I actually want to say, and then I finish the podcast and it's like, oh, I didn't say that. So I tried to just write a few words down as prompts to keep me on track, but make sure I cover the things I want to say. So that brings us to the end of this week's podcast. Don't know how long that's been. Hopefully it's shorter if I'm going to be doing it weekly, and keep everybody tuned in. Come back next week, see whether my new running plan has actually had the desired effect. I don't know what the desired effect is. I'm not expecting to get to the end of the week and feel like my runs have been brilliant, because my legs are going to be knackered. I'll have been running every day, even though it's a shorter distance, and I'll have been doing Joe Wicks. So at the end of the week I expect to feel completely drained. So I'm not sure what I'll be saying this time next week, apart from continuing for another week to then get to the point where I'm feeling stronger and fitter. We'll see what happens. Okay, well, thank you for tuning in, and I will be back again with you soon. Enjoy your week, and if you'll be listening to this on reflection, but hopefully start to enjoy some of those easing of the lockdown rules. Just be sensible, and let's all abide by those rules. Still stay at home where possible, whilst taking advantage of being able to see people, but maintaining social distances, just to try and avoid that second wave. And then we'll all be able to spend more time with our families again in the future. Okay guys, speak to you all soon. Bye bye.
So there you go. What do you think to that? Good. Yeah. YouTube watchers, make sure you're YouTube subscribers. Like, share, comment. Then tell everybody you know. Hold them at gunpoint. Get them to do the same. Yeah. Everybody jump over to the Cookiecast.com. Check us out over there. Send us a whole variety of love, whether it's social media or email based. Or take a picture of yourself looking at the website and send it to us. How about that? So there you go. That's this one done. Until next week and next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then. Bye.